Welcome to Mishna study, Masechet Terumot Perek Yod Mishnah Yud Aleph. Over here in this Mishnah, we're going to speak about vegetables that were boiled or cooked together. So if you remember in the first Mishnah of this Perek, we spoke about the lentils and the onion, right, that were mixed together. And if you remember Harambam over there in the Perush, he explained the views very clear. And he said that this is specific if they were mixed together after they were cooked. But if they were cooked together, then it's going to be, you have to check it, b'noten ta'am. You have to check to make sure that it didn't give off flavor to one another, right? So according to that Mishnah, nothing is allowed to be cooked together, right? If it's cooked together, you need to check to make sure that it doesn't give off any flavor. Our Mishnah, we're going to see other opinions that argue on that Mishnah, right? That's how you're going to have to set it up. That's why Harambam explains of different things that could potentially be allowed, different vegetables that were boiled or cooked together. We'll see different opinions, but it's arguing, and it's important to mention, it's arguing on that first Mishnah of our Perek. So Rabbi Yosef Omer, comes Rabbi Yosef and says, Kol nishlakim im atiradim asurim, anything that's, he says, that's nishlak, right? Nishlak is boiled. It's boiled with tered. Right, tered is leek, right? It's silic, right? Anything that's boiled with this leek is asur, right? So let's say you went ahead and you had carrots, you boiled it in a pot with leek. Okay, so because you boiled it with leek, then the leek terumah, so leek terumah is going to give a flavor and it's going to make those carrots asur. Why? Because the leek has a strong taste. Right? That gives no tentam. But what does this mean? What could you infer? According to the Rabbi Yosef, any other two vegetables that were boiled together would be allowed. You took two carrots, you boiled them together, that would be okay, right? Even though one's terumah, not pickled. Everything we spoke about earlier in our Perek where they were pickled together, that's allowed. That was last Mishnah. If they were pickled together, it's allowed. Comes our Mishnah and comes to Rabbi Yosef, and he says, you know what? Even if the two vegetables were boiled together, they're allowed, unless the terumah vegetable was a leek. Comes Rabbi Shimon and he adds, Rabbi Shimon Omer, kiruv shel shaki im kiruv shel baal asur mipnei shu bolea. You know what? Everything's allowed, right? All vegetables are allowed, except if you have the cabbage, right? And now over here, Rabbi Yosef is talking about a cabbage that's from a field that's watered with rain. Right? Or the first one is one that's artificially irrigated, right? It needs extra rainwater, right? And it's boiled and it's cooked with a cabbage of baal. Baal, it only needs its rainwater. So what happens? Now the two of them are cooked together. Now what does the Mishnah, what does the Bishimon come and say? He says, you're not allowed the kruv of the shaki, right? Which is the one from the, that needs the extra irrigation. It's much leafier. It's a softer, softer leaves of that cabbage, and it absorbs more. Also, you need to irrigate it more, right? So it's naturally drawing more and more water. So therefore, it's going to draw, right, when it's boiled together with the cabbage of the baal, it's going to draw the water from the baal. So if the terumah is the kruv shel baal, it's going to make the kruv shel shaki asur because it's drawing much more. Comes to Rabbi Akiva and he adds more. Rabbi Akiva, not only if they're boiled together, but also let's say you're talking about grains or legumes or other things that you have to cook, not just boil. We're not doing just boiling carrots. That's just a few minutes. Over here we're talking about something that needs really to be cooked together. Even if they're cooked together, they're allowed. They're mutar unless ela im habasar, right? Unless they're cooked with meat. And what's the case over here? If they're cooked with meat, if the vegetable, right, of terumah is cooked with meat, right, then the vegetable will give a flavor to the meat itself, and it will make the meat asur like terumah, right? It will take on the meat, will take on that status of terumah. And comes Rabbi Yochanan ben Uri, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Uri omer, hakaved oseret ve'ena ne'eseret meshi poletet ve'eno bolat, right? When we said, everything, Rabbi Akiva, said everything's, allowed unless it's with meat, comes to Rabbi Yochanan and he modifies it, and he says, not all meat, right? All meat, would be asur. I agree with you, but you know what? There's a type of meat that even that meat is allowed, and that is the liver, right? The liver, if it was cooked with vegetables, terumah vegetables, he's going to say, it's not going to absorb that that flavor of the vegetables. Why? Because the liver itself could only become, it could only make other things asur, right? That the blood and the liver is cooked with something else, it'll make that other dish, the rest of the dish asur, because it's, spitting out the blood, into the rest of the item, and you're not allowed to eat them, right? But it can't become asur, it can't absorb, right? Because it's not going to absorb when it is being polet, right? When it's giving off, when it's giving off the flavor. So when it gives off flavor, it doesn't absorb, right? That's the concept by liver. Halacha is not like anyone in our Mishnah, right? Halacha is like the first Mishnah in our Perek, which says that anything that is cooked together, right, it's going to give off flavor. So the chumrah, right? All these other opinions are much more makil. Also, when it comes to the liver, Rambam points out the halacha over here. Halacha is that the liver itself, you only allowed to eat it in one of three ways. Right? How could you eat liver? Right? Because liver is filled with blood. Right? So you can't, if you cook it, right, you're not allowed to eat it. Why? Because it ends up like spitting out the blood and then reabsorbing it in, and then you're eating blood, right? It's a surah dam. So you're not allowed to go ahead and eat liver that's cooked, right? So what's the way to go ahead and eat liver? So Rambam points out you can do one of three ways. Or you're holetet. Holet is like it's a quick dip, into vinegar, right? That's one option, right? Before you cook it until it becomes like whitish, right? Or you could go ahead and you go ahead and be holetet in hot water, right? In boiling hot water. So again, it's also like a quick dip into hot water, and it sort of like freezes the blood inside. And then you can go ahead and cook it. Or the last option is to go ahead and roast it, right? You put it on the grill, right? You roast it on an open flame, and then you're allowed to go ahead and cook it afterwards. And he points out, right? The option that everyone is noheg today, the minhag, the excess, the minhag that everyone does today, and that's what the halacha is to go ahead and roast it, before cooking.